Greetings, everyone. Crypto Damas here, your favorite cryptocurrency financial astrologer. And I just wanted to do a short YouTube video on the upcoming full moon here in the United States on Thursday, August 11th. This is a really interesting full moon, and we can learn a lot about astrology for students of astrology. There's a lot of interesting alignments in this full moon. And of course, full moons are kind of a high energy peak of the monthly cycle. And generally, people tend to feel a little bit stronger emotions. For markets, we can see kind of stronger sentiment during that time. And this one's very interesting. So let's go and look at the chart for this full moon, which I have set up for the United States on the West Coast. And of course, that may vary slightly. Hang on a second here. Let me just get that set up. That's gonna, my chart is set for my location and time zone, but of course, that's gonna vary slightly depending on where you're located in terms of what the time is and what signs are on the ascendant and the houses. But so here we have the chart for this upcoming full moon on Thursday, August 11th. It's gonna hit exact around 6:35 p.m. on the Pacific time on the US West Coast. It's going to be at 19 degrees Aquarius. So first of all, we have the sign of Aquarius, which is actually a bit aloof. It's not a super emotional sign. It's actually a bit cold, a bit standoffish, and a bit aloof. As we know, from astrology, Aquarius is also associated with things like the betterment of humanity and the betterment of the collective. But it's also can be a bit cold and dry emotionally. It doesn't always express emotions very well. And this one is also, interestingly, the main feature of this full moon is that it's going to be conjunct Saturn in Aquarius. And this is really going to emphasize the Saturnian qualities of Aquarius, the fixed sign qualities of Aquarius. So we could see problems arising that have to do with rigid ideological battles, where neither side is willing to compromise. This is one of the downsides of Aquarius. Now, this full moon is very complex, like I said. First of all, it's going to be conjunct the planet Saturn, which has a heavy, serious quality to it. And Saturn is also associated with fear, challenges, obstacles, difficulties, limitations, restrictions, boundaries. Also, hard work, focus, and discipline are the positive qualities of Saturn. Success through hard work could also be emphasized by this full moon. Success through hard work for the betterment of the collective or the betterment of humanity would be one of the more positive expressions of this full moon in Aquarius. However, there's a couple other qualities here. And as I said on Twitter today, this is kind of a vibe killer. Okay, this is kind of a party killer, right? You know, the full moon conjunct Saturn has a very heavy, serious quality to it. So I don't think it's going to be a very joyous full moon. I don't think it's going to be a very celebratory type of full moon. I think it's going to have a very serious tone to it. We could see some fear in the markets, as I've already mentioned, I think in my previous video. But just in general, I'd say it's going to be a more somber tone to the week based on that full moon. Now, the full moon is also going to be squaring Uranus and a little bit more widely squaring Mars. Pretty tight square to Uranus, actually less than 1 degree, right? So it's really going to activate that Uranus Saturn square, which is a very tense, stressful aspect. Now, the moon in the square to Uranus is a little bit different than that conjunction to Saturn, right? That Uranus tends to be more exciting, but also quite chaotic, volatile, and unstable, and very unpredictable. So we could expect possibly some sudden, unexpected, dramatic news events during this week on that aspect. You've also got the square to Mars, which is a bit more edgy, and that's more having to do with typically anger, frustration, resentment. It could be conflicts, arguments, and so forth. Or even we could see some skirmishes or conflicts break out internationally in those geopolitical hotspots. So it's a pretty tense, difficult full moon. It doesn't really have any favorable aspects that are offsetting it. In fact, it has one more challenging, difficult aspect. And that is that both the sun and the moon are going to be in a square to the lunar nodes. Actually, the sun will square the lunar nodes the day before on Wednesday. Now, this is really interesting because it means that the sun and the moon, so the full moon alignment, are going to be in the position we call in the bends, which is square both the south and the north node. Okay, that's a very unique, special position in astrology, in the bends. It kind of has this paralyzed, stuck in the middle quality to it. So if you think of the north node as moving ahead and the south node as moving backwards, planets that are in the bends, they're kind of too committed to go back now, but there's a lot of doubt and fear about moving forward. So they tend to be quite paralyzed and stuck. And I think this could manifest in a lot of different ways. We might feel stuck between going back and going forward in our lives personally, and we could see that manifest also in politics or global news events as well. In the war, perhaps the Russians might feel that they're too committed to pull back, but they're not really making any forward progress in their war in the Ukraine. So that's just one possible example of that manifesting. Now, this is interesting for markets because it's coming on the following the CPI numbers, the inflation report, the very closely anticipated and closely watched inflation data that's coming out tomorrow. And so that's really, I think, part of this whole full moon this week. And my read on that is kind of the inflation numbers, everybody's looking for them to come down a little bit, for that CPI print to be a little bit lower. And maybe it's a little bit lower, so it kind of, there's a little bit of hope there that inflation is starting to cool off and maybe has already peaked. But I don't think it's going to be low enough to really dramatically change the macroeconomic picture and change the Fed's policy of hiking rates. So it's probably we're going to be stuck in the middle there with, that's kind of my guess. Of course, anything could happen. But, as we know, gas prices have been coming down. Some food prices have been coming down. So it does seem like inflation is cooling off a little bit. But we'll have to see how that consumer price index scores tomorrow. I think it looks very choppy and volatile on the markets. Now, ordinarily, and I've been a little off on my calls, I've been a little too bearish. Ordinarily on this full moon conjunct Saturn, I would be quite bearish and I would be looking at shorts. However, we still have this kind of bullish formation of, which I've been talking about a lot on my Patreon, which is Uranus is conjunct the North Node. And that has been bullish throughout July and August. The North Node is a point of success and material gains and wealth. And it's actually a very bullish point. And anytime a planet conjuncts the North Node, we can see more bullish type of price action in the markets. And so far, especially with Uranus, we've seen a big rebound for crypto and tech stocks. But in the bigger scheme of things, it's actually been a pretty weak rally. Bitcoin hasn't even been able to get up, above 25,000. So now Uranus and the node, they're still closely conjunct, as you see here, Uranus at 18 and the North Node at 17. But now they're starting to separate on this full moon. They're starting to move apart. And this is the main factor I'm watching to see how long the rally is going to continue. If Uranus on the North Node has been the main factor that's been driving these stock and crypto rallies, the separation of Uranus and the node could bring an end to the rally. However, they're still going to be pretty close within a few degrees for most of August. So we have to see how the markets do when they start to separate. I was looking at Bitcoin today here, and we have a possible double top on the daily chart, but we also have some higher lows. So it'll be really interesting to see here if this level here around 22.6 on the daily chart holds. If that starts to break down, it would be much more bearish. But what's a little bit more interesting actually is the S&P 500 daily. Now this is really interesting as Uranus and the North Node separates. The S&P 500 is at a key daily resistance, okay, which was a support level from June of 2021. and ended up as a support level again here in January of 2022. Ultimately, it broke and then was retested as a resistance here in May of 2022. It got rejected, went all the way down to 38. And now it's bounced quite strongly back up to that 4160. And so far, we've got a rejection. Okay, it could still be a bullish consolidation under resistance, possible. Okay, however, this is a bit concerning. If you look at the Bitcoin daily, the S&P 500 daily MACD, okay, it's at the very top end of the oscillator range. In fact, you have to go all the way back to June of 2020 to see a higher daily MACD score there. So that's going back over 2 years now. And that, yeah, that was a sharp peak above there. But basically, we're kind of at this MACD resistance level, which you can see quite clearly here. So we're at resistance, we're at a technical resistance level, and we're at a MACD resistance level here. Historically, the daily MACD hasn't really gone higher than this 70 level. So that all paints somewhat of a bearish picture. And again, the astrology factor in the backdrop is that separation of Uranus from the North Node, which potentially has been kind of driving these rallies. So if we do get a rejection there, I would, I would really be looking for a retest of this level here of 3,900 on the S&P 500. And that, of course, will bring Bitcoin and crypto down with it as well. So yeah, that's kind of just my short little update on the markets and this really important full moon that's coming on the heels of the CPI report tomorrow. There is another couple factors here. Venus is ingressing into Leo that day. That's a favorable positive factor. Saturn is going to be coming off of the Bitcoin natal Neptune. That's not a favorable, but it's the end of an unfavorable, which sometimes can act as a favorable. Sometimes when Saturn pulls off of a natal planet, the price will start to move up because that pressure, that resistance level, that limitation the limitation is removed. So the price can now move up. We're also entering into a more bullish moon phase. So there are a couple of bullish factors. Venus ingress into Leo. That Leo is a sign of confidence and fire and strength. That could be a favorable aspect too. So we could see the rally, certainly we could see the rally continue in the second half of April. Again, it all comes back to the main factor here, which is Uranus separating from that North Node. If that's the factor that's really been driving things, then we should see the markets start to show some signs of weakness. And I think eventually this will be shown to be a bull trap. I, had made some really quite bearish calls for lower tests of the really lower support levels for Bitcoin. So far, that hasn't happened. But we're going into a series of very unfavorable aspects in quarter 3 and 4 here. So my feeling is it's just a matter of time before the markets take another leg down. I don't know the exact timing of it. We'll have to watch these factors. We'll have to watch the technicals. We'll have to watch Uranus on the North Node and see how it all plays out. But those are the things I'm looking at, guys. I hope financial astrology students and practitioners will find this interesting. And thanks for watching my YouTube channel. If you like this kind of work, if you like this kind of information, please check out my website. It's www.astrocryptoreport.com. And especially on there, you'll find my links to my Patreon group, which is really, I really do the really in-depth, detailed analysis on the markets with financial astrology. Thanks again for listening today, guys. And I hope to see you soon.